Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Data Projects with MJ. Today we are doing a Twitter scraping web application. I'm going to be taking you through the code analysis or code breakdown of how I built this pretty awesome tool. I've built it using Streamlit and Twint. So for those who do not know, Streamlit is a package, a Python framework that allows you to build web applications very easily and it makes them very beautiful. And Twint is a Twitter scraping web API that does not require any web authentication and stuff like that. It's pretty awesome. So let's get into it. Now I'm going to show you a demo of how the app actually works, and then I'm going to be taking you through the code analysis afterwards. So for this example, let's just scrape Dogecoin. I mean, why not, right? Let's look for 20 tweets. We want to download the CSV afterwards and the name of the downloadable CSV afterwards. So I'm going to call it Doge and let's search for that. This is the form that you're going to be looking into. So we're going to be getting our data from this form here. Yes, so now it scrapes some data and this is the resulting factor. So we have these unique identifiers. It's in a table format, unique identifier. Then we have the date. This is the date when the tweet was made. I know it's today because the API is scraping the latest data input, the latest tweets that were made. So it's the date as well as the tweet itself, and it goes on and on and on and on, right? And then at the very bottom, here's the part that we say downloadable CSV, and as you can see, the name is doge.csv. So I'm gonna be showing you how to build this, and we're gonna then look at some of the adjustments that can be made and how configurable Streamlit actually is. So here's the code. We're going to start with Streamlit, importing it as st. Then we're gonna have Twint and pandas. So we're gonna be using pandas for this part here when you're actually visualizing the table. There's a part where we're gonna be reading a CSV and making sure that we're using only specific columns and everything. Streamlit does have a pandas function, but a data frame function, but it's not as beautiful as a table and intuitive as pandas. So yes, and then we're going to create a custom function for actually the CSV download link. This part here, we actually get the hyperlink to download the CSV. That's a custom function. I'm going to be getting to that at the end because it's the last piece of code in this project. So we're going to start with the image, st.image, this banner right here. It's a very simple one, self-explanatory. You can configure it as well. You can see the documentation here. There's the image, which is an image. You can have a caption to it. You can have the width, use column width, blah, blah, blah. Now, this use column width function feature is a feature that you have here because Streamlit actually has a layout function to it, and which you can choose to have different pieces, different components in different columns. So you can have something in the middle column, in the last column, in the left column, right column. So it's pretty configurable. But for this project, we're just sticking with the basics, the default for all of them. That way they stick right to the middle. As you can see, it's in the middle right here, and when you zoom out, it's nice and centered. Even on a mobile phone, it actually shows up like this, so it's pretty neat. I like it this way. Then we have a subheader, pretty self-explanatory as well. It's bold text that's not quite as big as a topic, but not quite as small as the other general text. Then you come to the main player in this entire piece of code. It's st.form. So the st.form, it's a form component from Streamlit, and this form component basically allows us to build this form combined like this. Let me just refresh the page. It allows us to build this component as is, because normally before Streamlit had the form feature, it only had the components as separate pieces. So if you wanted to build something that had multiple input users that were linked to each other, such as a form, you had to kind of like hack around it to kind of link the components together. But with the current feature, which is forms, and the form function is pretty new. So now that we have this function, you can basically just open it with the with statement and everything that comes after that st.form function right here, and the submit button, everything that's in between that is linked together. So when you click the submit button, it all travels together as one output. Right, so let's look at what we have here. So we have the text input, which is basically what we are searching for. Because this is a term search, a phrase searching function, we don't need that much. We just need the actual label itself, which is the text. What do you want to search for? We can have things like the key, multiple value, the maximum characters, and stuff like that. You can have a a large amount of them. So for this, we're just gonna stick with the basics, what you want to search for, and that's it. We're not gonna add anything creative to that. Then I will have a slider here. Now, there are a number of ways where you can have number input on Streamlit. There's actually another text input, but that's specific for numbers. So it has a number clicker and stuff like that. Let's see if I can't show it real quick. Let's just say number is equals to st dot number. There it is, number input, and let's label it number. Let's see if that works. Let's click always rerun here. Yes, so here it is. You can actually increase and decrease as you choose. You can specify to be integers or floats. Yes, minimum value, maximum value, the value itself, the base value, steps, and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. We can have the minimum value as 0, the maximum as 10, and the step could be 1, right? Let's try step to be 1. Let's cancel that. Sorry, I just wanted to run this. Stop and rerun. So here, as you can see, now it's working. 1 or 2, blah blah blah. Then you can even just go 9, press enter to apply, etc. So that's one way of doing it. But for this one, I just chose to stick to a number slider because it just looks nicer, I guess. I don't know. So for the slider, same features, it has the same features as the same parameters as the number input. So you can choose the slider, the label of the slider, how many tweets do you want to get, the minimum value, maximum value, as well as the step. So minimum value is the number at the very beginning, maximum is the number at the very end, and then step is the increments in between. So this one, because the step is 20, it's gonna count in intervals of 20. Now you also have a value called value, and this value, you use it to specify a value that you want the slider to begin at, right? Let's say 100. I just want to show you what it's like, right? As you can see, it goes immediately to 100. Now the use case for this could be in places where you're tracking user input, like you want to say, for example, let's say you're building some kind of a web application for tracking weather, for example. You may ask people to choose the city that they're from, and then when they choose a city, you can have a city assigned to a base number, a base temperature, for example. And if the users are not agreeing with the temperature, then they can choose a different temperature. That's when something like values would work out. So you could have the value as 35 degrees Celsius for a city like Johannesburg, and if the people feel like, nah, it's much colder than that, then they can configure it themselves. So this value number would be 35 if we're going to be using that same example that I just gave. I hope that makes sense. Right, so moving on, we're gonna have this radio switch, radio clicker, radio. I don't know why they call it radio, but I just call it a radio button. So it's called streamlit.radio, and for that we're gonna have the label of the component, which says download SV file, and then here are your options. In here you're gonna label the options. So here I choose yes or no. That's why we're labeling our options right here. You can have another option, neither, and you can run that, and as you can see, neither shows up right there. So it's really up to you. You can have as many functions as you want, as many options as you want. However, it's only single choice, so you can only choose one out of all the options that you have. And the output for this is going to be the exact term that you put here. It's going to be a string. So if you have one of your options is neither, then the output is going to be neither. So you can be creative. You can choose it to be true or false, and in that way, whatever result you get, you just match it to a boolean directly. It's all good. It's all fantastic. And then we have file name, which is a text input as well. This is where we choose the name of the CSV that you want. So here's a nice feature that I like. It's a maximum characters function where you can choose the maximum amount of characters that you can put in. So for example, let's just type random letters. As you can see, we've hit the limit, which is 10, and it can't go above that. So that's what I like. I have it right there. And oh, one other thing, we also have a text area function, a component, I mean. So text area component is more for like when you have input that requires more space. For example, when you take in notes or something, then you're going to have a text area which is much bigger, and you can still add maximum characters to it. So we can have basically just all the what was Twitter back then, around four characters or something like that. Yeah, so you can have that little tweet hack thing. It's pretty smart actually. So we're just gonna keep it back where it was. Yes. So now we are done with the form, because after that we have the submit button, and then that's st is equals to form submit button, and you label the text whatever you want, the button whatever you want. I labeled it as search. That's right there. So now that we are done with the components of the app, we're not done with the app itself. Now we have to choose if submit button. So this function basically means if the submit button is clicked. Otherwise, it will be if submit button is equals to true. So submit button, this is where we start to configure Twint. So we're going to use this function twint.config. You can label this whatever you want. I just call it C because the documentation calls it C, and I've been using the past 3 years, I've been labeling it as C. It's become like a force of habit type thing. So it's c.config, twint.config, right? And we are configuring Twint with the search term that we want. So that's going to be the term that we import right here. The limit, which we chose from the slider. And then this one, c.store CSV, right? So what this does is that whatever data that we're going to get from the search term and the number of tweets, it's going to store it in the form of a CSV, right? It's going to store it so that we can use it later in the form of a CSV. However, we also have a function called c.output, which is what allows us to save that file to our local machine. So store.csv doesn't download it. It just takes the data and stores it in CSV format, and output saves it as a CSV, right? So in this case, this one store.csv, we keep it as true because we're going to put it in a data frame later for visualization. So in this case, we're just going to leave it as true. Then we're going to move on to output CSV. This is where we have our little radio box. Now, as you can see here, I said radio is equals to yes because my options are yes and no. If my options above was true and false, then here I would say if CSV is true or false, or whatever, right? And then that's when I say c.output, because if user wants to save it, then I have to output that file. So the output is going to be the file name that is specified right here in the text output. We're going to use that file name and then .csv. It's in an f text input type thing, right? I forgot what the name of this thing is when you're writing an F statement, right? And then we're going to then run the configured Twint search, and we're going to run it. Then whatever result we're getting, that result is what we're going to be using later on to save the data. So now we have data is equals to PD, pandas, a data frame. We're reading the CSV. The CSV that we're going to read is the one that's saved with the file name .csv, because the store and this output file are roughly the same. Roughly. Not exactly, roughly. So I'm going to be storing what's already been saved. I'm going to be using what's already been saved, and then choose the columns that I'm going to be using for it, which is the date and the tweet itself. Then we're going to take that data, that pandas data, and we're going to put it in the table that I showed you before. Let me just run a test for you real quick. Let's go with tech, and let's choose 20. Yes, and let's go tech. And while that's running, let's see what else is next, right? Okay, cool. So now that we have it here, as you can see, the columns that I chose was date and tweet. Here it is, date and tweet, and it's in the table form. I think we should try st.pandas. I'm not really sure what was the function of it again. Sorry about that. Yes, I don't think that's the correct syntax. This is going so badly right now. Okay, let's try this and let's highlight this out. Let's see what happens. I'm not sure if this is gonna work, but there's only one way to find out. Okay, that doesn't work. Yes, data frame. That should work. Let's do a search. Okay, there's nothing about the actual code itself. Yes, here it is. So as you can see, works roughly the same, but it's not exactly the same. I prefer pandas. I prefer the table rather than the data frame. Cool. So now we're done. We're gonna be dealing with this little friend of ours here. That is actually a custom function. This get CSV download link. So I made another Python script on the side and I call it functions.py. So with this one, we're going to import base64. Base64 is a framework that does string to byte conversions. And we're going to need it, especially when we're going to be downloading our files from CSVs. So we're going to say def function get CSV download link, and we're going to need two parameters: the CSV, the actual CSV, as well as the file name, right? And then we're going to be saying base64.encode. We're going to be encoding the CSV and decoding it as well. So this is where it does the whole string to bytes conversions to make it readable and more manageable for transfers or over your system. And then we're going to have an href link. So we're going to be using this base64 to create a hyperlink, an href hyperlink, so that we can download it. For those who do not know what web development, so when we're doing a website, you have hrefs, which are attachments and links that direct you to other places or other files around the internet. If your website has hyperlinks to external sites, or it can be just a link to another part of the actual web page or whatever, it's pretty simple. So A stands for attachment. Href, I don't remember what this stands for. I just summarized it as hyperlink reference. And then we actually have the data colon and the data type. So it's a file, a CSV, and it's been encoded by base64. And then you're gonna add, after the comma, you're gonna add our conversion result, which is this B64 function here. That's our conversion result. And then we're gonna add download, because if you don't add download, it'll just be a link that goes somewhere else. So you want it to download, and the file name that you want to download.csv, that's a file name that you're gonna be inputting right here. And then we're gonna close off the href, specify the name of the text, the hyperlink, which is this text right here, and then you're gonna be closing the href, and then you're gonna return the href. So this href is a link. Essentially, it's a link to where the app is. And then here we're going back to the CSV output that CSV is equals to true. So here we're saying if it's equals to true, give us a markdown, and this markdown is gonna be text. So if you're familiar with markdowns, you basically GitHub. Markdown is basic, nice text to a piece of code that doesn't make sense. I like to summarize that. So anyway, it's st.markdown, and you're gonna say get CSV link. That's that function that we have right there imported, and then we're gonna specify the file name, which is there, as well as the CSV. This is the CSV. So importing the CSV that we stored here with output, and then the file name, which we got from this part here, the text input, this last one here. So we get in that, we're storing it there, and we're looking at unsafe allow HTML. So what this stands for is that it's Streamlit's way of saying that allow code that's not within Streamlit's core source code. So you are making adjustments to the HTML and you want it to allow whatever has been done. If this was not specified, then it will give you a whole lot of errors, or just plain wouldn't run and pretend that it's not there. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how we build this beautiful web scraping tool. I am going to be hosting it on AWS as well as Heroku and on Streamlit sharing platform, which is share.streamlit.io. I will be doing videos on how to share those there. I've been having a couple of issues with Heroku, so I will be figuring that out and doing a video on that as well. I am going to be doing a full series tutorial on how to use Streamlit. It's not going to be long. It's going to be like probably 3 or 4 videos that are less than 10 minutes each. So it's going to be pretty cool because Streamlit is nice and simple. So I'm going to be doing that as well. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If you found this video to be insightful and helpful, please follow me on Twitter and GitHub at the Data Project with MJ, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you very much.